Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Michael McBride. I'm joined by our dynamic duo of psychologists.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride, and joining me today is the person I have managed to corrupt into both validating and exacerbating my worst psychological theories. Welcome, Dr. Daniel Kessler.
Validating your worst psychological theories.
Maybe my best. Maybe my best. We've talked about this idea of drift together, sometimes when you practice in a really similar way and you theoretically share a lot of overlap. There are times where we've sat back and gone, let's challenge ourselves. And that is something I really, truly, really appreciate about our relationship.
I want to jump in on this because this is a really interesting concept of the shift, the risky shift or the drift. And I think it's worth I'm just going to mention this like a PSA. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. McBride, because I'm pulling from information gleaned from a sociology class taken in the mid-1980s.
That's okay. I'm being 12 right now. I'm going, PSA. You meant public service announcement.
Yeah. Not prostate specific antigen. So more appropriate to my age, but like when you get groups of people together, especially like-minded groups, they shift to the more extreme.
Yeah.
And this sociological phenomenon is really fascinating in the modern era where we have aggregated people. Like it used to be, if you wanted to find like-minded people, you had to go somewhere and find them. Now we've got tens of thousands of hundreds of millions of people aggregated in the same space, all having strong opinions. And we're seeing these shifts to the extreme. And I really believe that the shift to the extreme, the polarization we're seeing, is related to that. Hey, you just wandered into a political podcast unintentionally.
It's true. It's true. And this is why Kennedy, after the Bay of Pigs, insisted on having people in the room that disagreed with him.
Exactly. I mean, I love that story.
You have to have disagreement in order to keep yourself from drifting to a really dangerous place, making really dangerous decisions or ignoring dangerous information.
Wow, we glean the same information from totally different sociology classes taken thousands of miles apart. That's exactly right. If you want to make a good decision, and I'm going to underscore this, what you just said, if you want to make a good decision, by the way, Gayle mentioned the Bay of Pigs fiasco and what happened as a result of that. Michael, I'm sure we'll put a link in the show notes to something about that. But what was done post that was create a situation where you intentionally bring someone who disagrees with you into the room. And anytime you're making a major decision about something that has huge import, we should be bringing opposing views in as much as we can to argue with us. Because that's how you make the best decisions. Not going to make any political comment beyond that right now.
No, and
you might be picking up what I'm dropping out.
On the show with each other, there are some times where you and I will devil's advocate because we know, we've worked together for almost a dozen years now. Probably a dozen years. We know with pretty good certainty what opinion or line the other will take. Sometimes we ask the question just because we want the other to say it, but we kind of know what, it's a relatively educated guess. But there are times where you and I will push each other because we know this is a phenomenon and we want to make sure that we're examining it from all sides possible.
So, excellent.
Anyway.
So with all of that out of the way, Michael, give us this week's scenario.
Well, I'll add two more really quick. I mean, Lincoln and his team of rivals, like he intentionally created a cabinet of people who disagreed with him. And then historically, I mean, the vice president used to be given to the second vote getter. So it often meant you had a John Adams and a Thomas Jefferson who were direct rivals of each other running the country, which is always kind of interesting. The more you know. Anyway.
Thank you.
There'll be links in the show notes.
For any of the newbies who are like, what is this? This is really not typically that kind of podcast, although there are all kinds of interesting opinions shared. So really what's happened here is we have two experts. I think of them as experts from Veritas Psychology Partners. And what I've done is I've gone out and I have found a scenario online where somebody has shared a post and said, hey, I lived through this. Who's the asshole here? And that's what we're going to hope to determine. I've tried to de-identify the posts so they're a little more discreet. And As always, stick around through the credits because today we're gonna tackle one of our mailbag questions. Somebody wrote us, and
Mailbag
actually
question.
they had a follow-up comment about one of our recent podcasts, the blueberry one. So anyway, we'll get to that. But for now, neither Dan nor Gayle have read this. I haven't shared with it anyway. I always like to see what they do with it cold anyway. So, and this is one that I thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I always enjoy the topics that I come up with for you, but every once in a while, the internet just has like this little gem of
You look so
such a
amused right now.
weird scenario that I just
See,
love.
you spotlight us, so people can't see you in the video. I just want to tell our listening and YouTube audience how amused. It is really fun. As Michael's wife, I get to see him just chuckle in amusement with himself or an idea, and he's just kind of giddy to share this with us today. Michael, please.
Okay, so the prompt for this is, am I the asshole for, and this is in it's in actual quotes, but I'm air quoting, vandalizing my neighbor's dog's winter coat?
We're gonna need more.
Yeah. So here's the scenario. The OP is 28 male, and he has a neighbor who is 87-year-old female. They live, and he says, we live in a rural area with a shaded, wooded back road connecting our driveways to the main road. It stays dark until almost 8 a.m. in the winter, making visibility difficult. My neighbor is nearly blind and has a friendly black lab that helps her navigate. The problem is that the dog, dressed in a black coat for warmth in the winter, roams freely on the shared roads in the morning, making him almost impossible to see. Between me and the other neighbors, we've almost hit him over 8 times in the last 2 months.
Oh.
I talked to my neighbor about adding bells or a new reflective coat, but she refused, saying the bells are too noisy and difficult for her to handle, and she was attached to this particular coat. After almost hitting the dog with my truck again, I took matters into my own hands and spray painted his coat with reflective paint. Now he's much easier to spot, and my neighbors agree it's safer. My neighbor didn't notice for a few weeks until her stepnephew pointed it out, and now she's furious, accusing me of vandalism and talking about lawsuits. I admit I could have used reflective tape or bought a new coat, but I generally thought I was helping. Am I the asshole here?
Wow.
So my first thought when you said vandalizing my dog's coat, I thought they were like he showed over the clippers and like.
I did too, right? No, oh my goodness gracious, we've
and then we
put
talking about
reflective paint to
spray
save
paint.
this
I'm like,
dog's life.
oh, the coat, the little jacket the doggy wears.
Yeah.
I can we go on a side here? I'm not a dog owner.
Please. Yeah.
What's with the coat on the dog thing? Do they need them?
Yeah,
I mean,
the
don't they
little
have
ones
coats?
especially, they get cold. Like
But
the
this is a
little...
lab.
Yes, I don't understand the coat.
Does the
And
lab need a coat?
Maybe we live really
is it a
far
lab?
north.
Wait, is it a lab coat? just
Okay, I think you broke me.
just curious if it's a
It
but
would
I
be
mean,
a white coat then, and maybe
I
it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Little stethoscope, doggy
I've always been troubled by coats on dogs. I always look at that and go, that just and if you're a listener and you want to tell me I'm an asshole for saying that, please do. But like, I mean, I've got cats, and I mean, fine, but all right.
Whether or not you put a coat on your dog, I think you as a dog owner have determined that your canine friend is cold and needs some additional layering. Okay, fine. Especially out in these colder climates. And we've gone through a really recent polar vortex of just shitty coldness. So like, I'm not gonna hate on anybody who wants to put a coat on their lab if they want the lab to have some outside time during a really cold snap. Like, fine. I really am struggling here because the OP, I'm going to get back to the scenario, has talked to the neighbor. And I do find it difficult as a citizen when you say to someone, hey, I see something happening with your dog that doesn't seem safe. I'm actually genuinely concerned about your pet's well-being, and you get blown off. I've actually had this happen. And I sit back and I scratch my head, like, where is our responsibility to this dog, just being kind of of kind, good citizens,
Mhm.
and where is it the rights of another person? I mean, here, or of the dog owner here, you potentially have a neighbor who could inadvertently harm the dog, and then what kind of damage does it do to the person who is responsible for that harm, but only because they couldn't see the dog? Like there's some level of, perhaps we're even protecting the neighbors from having a vehicle dog accident,
Yeah.
and the psychological harm that it can do to someone when you hit an animal with your vehicle. I don't think
This,
it gives them the right to damage the coat. Like, I'm just thinking more broadly about this.
yeah, I mean, this is the tough one, because on one hand, like, if someone says to me, I can't see your dog, and I almost hit your dog, and like 3 other people almost hit your dog, like I'd be like, again, I'm not a dog owner, but still, I'd be like, I like, if someone was gonna, you can't put a coat on a cat because they would, but like, I
It'd
would
flip
like,
you
what do
off.
I need exactly? What do I? That cat would be like, fuck are you doing? But
But
I
yes,
would be like,
right.
what do I need to do to make my dog more visible? How can I do it? Like, I would be going out of my way to do everything I could
Absolutely.
to make that doggy coat more visible, because it would terrify me to have my pet get hit by a car. That would just like freak me out. I would
Right.
absolutely.
Even a quick
And,
reflective collar, leave the coat alone.
yeah,
Just add a
and
reflective to the collar, because
and and at the same time, like, you don't get to spray paint someone else's shit.
especially if she's attached to this coat. Like, I have a real problem with this. This lady has said, hey, for whatever reason, this coat that my dog wears is special to me. And I want my dog, like maybe it was hand crocheted by said grandson or step nephew or whatever it was
Right,
that
whatever,
told her.
whatever.
Like, it has special meaning. You don't get to go into face that.
Yeah,
It's not your decision.
I, 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 you know, with apologies for rendering a decision too quickly, like, everyone seems like kind of an asshole here, except
Yeah.
for the minor character. We only point
The
out the minor
dog.
characters. Well, the dog and the nephew. Like, they're obviously cool people, right? I mean, cool entities, but
Probably.
probably,
I do
probably.
find myself scratching my head a little bit. So then this like whatever step nephew, grand nephew or whatever comes in and says, "Hey, did you know?" And she goes, "Nope, I didn't." She wouldn't have noticed. So whatever the OP has done
Well,
is
no.
relatively, no, stick with me here. The whatever the OP did also was relatively unobtrusive. It's not like it's a big
Well,
yellow
you,
orange streak on this coat where the lab walks in, right? Because that bright color on a black coat would
mhm.
be noticeable. She didn't notice. So there's
Well,
something here that is reflective, but not obvious unless it's unless you're hitting it maybe with headlights or something like that.
is Michael was I thought that was there a visual impairment here on the dog owner?
Yeah, the dog owner is
Oh,
nearly blind, is
oh,
what he
right.
said. So
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, I would think nearly blind is not totally legally blind, which, there's gradations here. And again, if you put a bright color on a black coat, you're gonna notice it.
I
So I do
yeah.
wonder how blind this person is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just
And it doesn't give him the right. It's a big ol' and in between those two things.
yeah, I mean, everyone's shitty here. I feel like
Yeah,
again, if you might hit my dog with your car, I'm gonna want to do whatever I can. At the same time, like, spray paint is a little extreme.
agreed.
Like, I mean, they make reflector tape, and you can,
Well,
and
and
it
the
would,
poster said, maybe I should have done something less invasive.
yeah,
Spray paint,
exactly.
reflective tape might have been the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, massage the fact pattern. Does he have the right to attach reflective tape to said
I
coat?
mean, still no, but
So, like, it
I
doesn't
mean,
matter if
it's
it's less
still,
invasive, does
I,
it?
this is a hard one because, like, I get it. Like, I would be wanting to do what this guy did,
Yeah.
or gal. I would want to do that. I'd be like, oh, if I could just put a little spray paint on there, yeah. At the same time, like, you don't get to do that. It's,
Is there another way to handle it?
I'm sorry.
Is there another way to handle it? We often say, like, oh, it could be solved by a conversation, and the OP had the conversation and it went nowhere. Then what? OP
Yeah.
comes into your office, Dan, and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so distressed. I'm so upset
Mhm.
about this. I've tried to handle it. What do I do, Dr. Kessler? Help me."
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know on this one because
It's
they've done
hard.
exactly what we want them to do, which is to have that polite, respectful, like, hey, I get where you're coming from. I just I don't know what the answer is because I don't want to be hitting the dog. I guess if I mean, obviously, if I'm the neighbor, I'm putting the reflector eye shit on my dog, like in a heartbeat. Like, what do you know? But if I'm the neighbor, I'm probably just driving scared in my neighborhood.
Really
I don't think
slowly,
there's
right?
I don't think there's not a good answer. And hope to hell that I never hit their dog because that would be devastating to the other person, but also to me. I don't want to like hit someone's dog with my car.
Right. Michael,
I mean,
you
Yeah.
what
So
did
I found an answer to a question you asked earlier, which is, do dogs need coats in the winter?
Oh, of course you
Which
did.
is, I mean,
we're bringing back to the important point here.
it depends, and I'll bring it back to the conversation you were just having. So
Please, but answer the
apparently,
dog.
Labrador retrievers originated in Newfoundland, Canada, and they were bred for their ability to retrieve things out of icy waters. And so their coat is layered, and it actually is kind of oily and repels water. So like it is intentionally built for cold weather.
So
Now,
this dog doesn't need a coat.
well, we
Thank you for
don't know
helping me out.
how many generations removed it is from the original breed, and if it's purebred or whatever. But anyway, so
It's in the middle of Minnesota.
but
For those who
if it
don't
doesn't
know,
need it, go
we're
ahead.
we're winter here. It's Minnesota and we're in winter. I got a neighbor who's got three huskies. These
Yeah.
things have been outside every day, all day long, living their very best lives. They're just
Right.
chilling out.
Probably with a sign saying, do not call animal control. They will
Yeah,
not come in. This is
it is
not
like
our fault. They
it is like
refuse.
0
The
outside
Huskies.
Fahrenheit, and these dogs are like,
Yeah.
I'm living my life. This is great for me, man.
Right.
And if the lab is, if I didn't know that about labs because I'm not a dog guy, but I think the solution here is take the coat off the dog. He doesn't need one.
It's not, but wait, now the dog's outside and it has black fur.
That's what I was gonna say. Now massage the fact pattern. There's no coat, but the dog is just dark and you can't see it.
So
Right.
What do you recommend? Like,
But do you have the right to attach a reflective color?
no, again, it's not your dog. I don't think you have the right to. I think you really should encourage, like, hey, I can't see your fucking dog. I don't want to kill your dog. Like, I really, really, really don't want to do that. Like, I really don't want to do that. Anyway, thank you for answering the question before, like with the, but what did the internet say about is everyone shitty like I think?
it's a mix of things. Most people came down on the side of you're not the asshole, but the everybody sucks here was a strong contingent as well.
Yeah.
And so the not the asshole comments basically said, the owner is valuing a coat over the life of her dog. What if someone unfamiliar with the road came through? The only reason it hasn't been hit is because you and the neighbors have been so careful. She should be thanking you, not criticizing you. So like
That's fair.
that's the not the asshole kind of comment. The everybody sucks here is technically the neighbor has the right to put her dog in danger if she chooses, but OP, your invention was still justifiable given the circumstance. However, you addressed it with the neighbor and she said no. You both suck here. Um,
Hmm.
so like those
Well,
are
I
kind of
doubt
those.
OP said to the neighbor, "Hey, can I spray paint the coat the dog's wearing?" Like, I don't think it was a direct ask, right? It probably was a softer conversation that was a little bit more tiptoey around, right? Hey, we don't see your dog. Is there something you'd be willing to do? Would you put some bells on it so we can hear it? Which, by the way, I don't know that the bells would help if you have your windows up and it's in the middle of fucking winter.
No, it's not going to
It's
help. The
the
bells are
idea
not
of the
going to make a
visual reflective something.
bells are not going to make a damn bit of difference here in
No,
Minnesota in the wintertime.
no,
Not one bit of difference in a
no,
Minnesota winter.
no.
Those bells. So
And
no.
and I'll add
Anyway.
most of the not the asshole people really, were very sympathetic to the dog and they said, "No, you did the right thing. You saved this dog's life." Blah blah. And maybe not because now the neighbor's mad and she's gonna take the coat off or who knows. But
Yeah.
um yeah, those were the main kind of things. You guys really touched on most of it. So
All right, good. Well, we're sort of bringing. I do get the point that people are making that maybe not the asshole if it's saving the dog's life. It's still just really, it really troubles me. So I'm still struggling with that.
yeah.
But
Well, thank you both for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, morality is often shades of gray and not just black labs or white labs.
Felt like an ethical dumpster fire. Thanks for sticking with us through the whole thing.
Not black labs or white labs.
Oh my gosh, our labs and lab coats.
Yeah. Well, if it was lab coat, it definitely would be more reflective. So, please follow and share Veritas Views on any of the podcast platforms with your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits for the bonus conversation. This time, it's going to be one of our mailbag topics. Somebody wrote in about the blueberry episode. So hang with us. See you on the other side of the credits.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation. So we've talked about it a number of times. Obviously, we have the mailbag, and
A mailbag.
It's so exciting. I love when people write into us. You know, sometimes they're writing in new questions. Sometimes it's a follow-up about something that we had got wrong.
Nah, that can't be.
Missed.
So this is what our mailbag person said. They said, we listened to the Blueberries podcast. I don't have an issue with most of what you said, but I do wonder what you do when the preferred fruit is too expensive. We live in a rural area and don't get the variety of fresh fruit that some people do. My 9-year-old daughter loves pineapple, but we don't always get that. I know we could give her canned fruit, but I don't like all the syrup. And like you said, I want her to see it in the true form, not hidden in a can or frozen and mixed into a smoothie. I want her to experience other fruit, but I also don't want the fight. At the same time, sometimes we really just can't find fresh pineapple or afford it. Do you have any thoughts about what to do with this? Because my wife and I disagree about how to handle it.
Okay, I really appreciate this. This is great. And I also don't want to necessarily be dispensing parenting advice directly to an individual. So let's talk more broadly about how do you handle when a particular item of food is not available and your child has a preference for something that just isn't available in your area. What do you do, Dan? How do you help parents with this kind of thing?
I think we need to be honest with our kids that sometimes the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to be able to provide you with this, but I can't. Or I'm choosing, or I could, but I'm choosing not to. Because this ingredient is expensive or not available, or available but super expensive at this time of year. I don't think it harms our kids to hear a no from their parents. I do like the parenting, like, no, and let me explain why the no. Sometimes the no is, this is just not a value. I mean, this is what an opportunity to teach kids about, like, the cost of these blueberries is the same as the cost of this. You know, we sometimes have this conversation, like, if we eat out at this restaurant once a week and it costs this many dollars over the course of a year, what else could we use that many dollars for? And those are opportunities for teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a teachable moment for the kid. Like, yeah, I would love to give you this, and
Right.
this is either too expensive or not available, and let's talk about what other options there are when the item you want is too expensive, unavailable, etc. I think we can turn all this into a teaching moment. What are your
I
thoughts?
agree. I agree. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like the fact that, we are reminded that we can tell our children no. I'd love to, but this is not within our budget, or it's not available. What we do have available is, X or Y. Let's go ahead and have you choose one of those. Of those, which would you prefer? That kind of thing. And I think it's also okay to say, this is not something that's available all the time. And so occasionally we may make this choice as a treat, or hey, we're traveling and this has become available. Let's really lean into. And so you show the child that you recognize their preference and the thing that they really love. And with these other circumstances, we're not either able to get it or able to afford it. So when it does become available, we can make that as a priority preference.
Or we choose not to.
Mhm.
Like sometimes, yeah, we could afford it,
Sure.
and we're choosing not to because it's not what we're valuing right now,
Mhm.
and that's okay too.
Right, right.
Like
So,
it, like we can just say, yeah, we can afford that, and
mhm.
no,
Yeah, we're
that's
going to
not.
choose not to. Mhm.
No, we choose not to. So
Yes. So I think there's lots of ways to handle it when that particular ingredient or choice is less available or very expensive, and you are going to go ahead and say no.
yeah,
That's just
yeah.
because the child wants it doesn't mean they necessarily get it. It does smack of an earlier episode that we had, and I'm not going to be able to maybe remember all the details now. But there was, maybe I'll help have Michael dig into our archives a little bit and link it in the show notes, because there are times where we've said something kind of similar on this show, which is just because the child, I think it was,
The
wanted to
gluten-free
eat a
donut,
certain, what?
gluten-free donut, gluten-free donut.
No, it wasn't the gluten-free donut.
Oh,
It was I think it was the child who was making a choice. I think it was vegan choice. And
mm, yeah,
and we
yeah.
were kind of concerned about the financial burden on the family.
Hmm.
And the parent was saying, am I the asshole for saying basically, no, I'm not gonna, I can't afford to buy the ingredients this way, or something like that. But we'll put the episode in the show notes, because I think there's something similar here. Just because the child says that they want it, are we obligated to provide the food exactly the way they want it? And you and I came down and said, no, there are some opportunities here for conversation always, which, I know this is the Am I the Asshole podcast, but maybe it should be Did I Have the Conversation podcast?
That's accurate. That is accurate.
Anyway.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for both those. I'll link both of those episodes because Dan, you're right. The gluten-free donut one
Mhm.
is also kind of a child entitlement kind of
Hmm.
conversation, which kind of it gets to that saying no to children sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you guys both talked about that there as
Right.
well. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune in again next week for a whole nother Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.